Welcome to the Delmarva Almanac. Each week we connect you to the best of Delmarva. Now here's naturalist Dave Wilson talking about the colonies of birds nesting along our coastal bays with his guest Dave Kirsten on the telephone.
My guest today is Dr. Dave Kirsten. Dr. Curson has worked as a director of bird conservation for Audubon, Maryland, D.C. for the past 12 years, overseeing the Important Bird Areas program, advocating for better land use planning, and implementing conservation projects for birds and their habitats in Maryland and the District of Columbia. Recently, Dr. Curson's work with Audubon has focused on tidal marsh conservation, and he's implementing a number of projects to increase marsh resilience to sea level rise. Dave came to the U.S. in 1993 and received his Ph.D. in wildlife ecology from the University of Wisconsin in Madison in 2003. He's originally from London, England, as we will soon hear. Today we'll talk about some colonial nesting birds in the coastal bays and the tough odds they face in the few places that they breed in Maryland. He joins us by phone from his office near Patterson Park in Baltimore today. Dave, good morning.
Good morning, Dave. Pleased to be with you.
So, Dave, can you tell me a little bit about Audubon's Important Bird Areas program?
Sure. Yeah, the Important Bird Areas are basically the most essential places for birds in Maryland. And Audubon has been identifying these sites along with our partners for the last few years. And our strategy is to identify these sites using science-based criteria and then to focus our conservation efforts on those sites. Obviously, our resources for conservation are limited, and so we use this as a filter that tells us where to focus our resources.
Now, I know, Dave, you're doing a lot of work in the coastal bays, important bird areas here on the eastern shore. Can you talk about some of the work you're doing down here?
Yeah, sure. The Maryland coastal bays is one of those important bird areas that we identified, and it's a really terrific site. It's a big area. Like many of the important bird areas, it covers private land as well as public land. It covers a variety of habitats. And the Coastal Bays IBA has beaches, salt marsh, coastal lagoons, and there's a range of species that use these habitats. And these species cover the three categories that are important in these important bird areas. We have birds which are at risk. We have birds which are habitat specialists of one particular type of habitat, like a marsh or a beach. And we have birds that congregate in really large numbers. And the work that we're doing in the coastal bays at the moment is really focused on helping beach and island nesting birds. These are colonial seabirds. They've had quite a few problems lately. Some species, including black skimmer, royal tern, and common tern, have declined enormously in the last 20 years. And this is due to the islands on which they nest becoming eroded and even disappearing entirely. And so we're trying to make sure that these birds can nest on the last few remaining islands undisturbed by humans and dogs and some of the other things that can cause some problems. These birds need they need undisturbed places to nest, and they're very vulnerable to predators. So when they nest on beaches which are attached to the mainland, they're very vulnerable to ground predators like foxes and raccoons. And on islands, they're vulnerable to avian predators like gulls and crows. Now, most of the time, they can defend themselves against those predators because they nest in big colonies. So when they all gang up on a crow or gull that's coming too close to their nest, they can usually drive it off. But when they're disturbed by people or dogs, they're kept away from their nests for quite a long period of time. And in that time, crows and gulls can come in and eat the eggs or chicks. And also, if they're put off their nest for a very long time, the sun can literally bake an egg and kill it that way.
I assume you've seen some of this happen in the coastal bays.
Yes, quite a bit. The islands in the coastal bays are mostly owned by the state of Maryland, and these are they're closed to public access during the spring and summer. but not everyone realizes this. There are signs posted, but we do see people landing boats on the island sometimes and walking their dogs. Usually these people are just curious and don't realize the significance of the signs, and so it's very important that we can kind of get the message out and let people know why they shouldn't visit these islands.
Dave, tell me more about black skimmers.
The black skimmers are a really interesting bird. They're very distinctive in the way that they forage. You've probably seen these on television documentaries. Basically, they fly along close to the water and they dip their lower mandible into the water and create a long ripple, so they disturb the surface of the water. Then they turn around and they fly that same line back, and fish are actually attracted to this little ripple that the skimmers created, and the lower mandible of the skimmer's bill is longer than the upper mandible, and so when it comes back along that line, it trails its lower mandible in the water. When it feels a fish, it snaps it up and eats it. It's a unique method of fishing that you don't see any other seabirds do.
How about royal terns?
Well, royal terns are one of the endangered species in Maryland. They've declined a lot in the last 20 years. They are down to just about 200 pairs in Maryland. And they're quite a distinctive bird. They have a white bird that looks a little bit like a seagull, but it's a little bit smaller, has a black shaggy crest and a bright orange beak. Looks like it's got a carrot strapped to the front of its head. And they have raucous cries. And these are also really iconic birds of Ocean City. When you go on vacation to Ocean City, you drive across the Route 50 bridge, approaching the town, and you often see royal terns flying overhead, calling loudly. And to me, I always think of these birds as meaning I've arrived at my vacation when I see them. They're really special to Ocean City.
What's a good way for folks to get involved if they want to help educate the public? Are there any avenues for them to do that?
Well, I think firstly I would say that if you're a boater, to heed the signs and look at the birds from a distance and not land your boat on the island in the summer. For others, I would say there's a couple of ways to get involved. One is to watch the birds, again, from a distance if you can, and to report when you see some of these endangered birds like black skimmers and royal terns on islands. Let Audubon know. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to know where they are. And secondly, if you do see anyone on the islands, rather than approaching the person, you can call the Natural Resources Police and alert them to the fact that people are on the islands when they shouldn't be.
Well, thanks, Dave. Actually, we will have the number on the website for you. We've been talking to Dr. Dave Kirsten, the Director of Bird Conservation for Maryland Audubon, D.C. For more information on the colonial nesting birds in the coastal bays, you can check out delmarvaalmanac.com/nature, and we'll have the number for you right there. Dave, thanks so much.
And thanks to you, Dave. Well, that's all for this edition of the Delmarva Almanac. Be sure to follow us on Facebook or Twitter, and next week join us to learn more about our local culture and get connected to our natural wonders. We'd like to thank our community partners, the Friends of Delmarva Public Radio, and our underwriters for their help in bringing this program to you, our audience. If you'd like to become an underwriter for this program, visit delmarvaalmanac.com/support. Our theme music was provided by Brightside Studio. This show has been a Moonshell production. Thanks for listening. Until we meet again, may the rhythms and tides of Delmarva bring you good fortune.